a seabird colony. You can find out a whole bunch of things about seabird biology and behavior that you didn't know before. But when you think of a seabird colony, you don't remember the papers. You remember the colony itself, the sensory shock of it, the way it hooks into you, the way the experience of being inside it changes you and your relation to the world. That's how acceptance lives in my mind. It's soaked into my subconscious and continues to exist there, answering questions and posing new ones almost daily in a way that exegesis or theoretical speculation cannot. In his essay, Hauntings in the Anthropocene, VanderMeer suggested that mapping elements of the Anthropocene via weird fiction may create a greater and more visceral understanding, render more visible, precisely because so many of the effects of this era are felt in and under the skin, as well as in the subconscious. Exactly. And so this introduction will not attempt to explain or solve the puzzles posed by acceptance, but will speak a little of what the book made of itself, in one mind. For it's clear that my reading of the series has been shaped by my own history as an amateur naturalist and a historian of science specializing in the history of natural history, and as someone who stood, bewildered, on an ex-naval base so full of life that even at night wings brushed my face as I walked. I came to acceptance in a kind of hermeneutic fever, burning with questions and desperately wanting answers on the true nature of Area X, even though I knew the categories question and answer were ones Area X would laugh at. The novel opens with a scene from Annihilation, the death of the psychologist on the 12th expedition. We learn she is the Southern Reachhas director. This time, we are given the scene from her point of view, and acceptance takes us forward in this way, switching between multiple timelines and revisiting characters we already met, but only partially knew. Gloria, the psychologist director, whose girlhood on that coastline has abiding relevance for her actions in the story. John Rodriguez, also known as Control, a word whose multiple meanings, the exercise of power, an experimental necessity, and an institutional role, are bound up in his fate. Saul, the lighthouse keeper and former preacher, whose story is a tender and terrible tragedy. Ghost Bird, the biologist's double, a person made by Area X, and whose relationship to it is thus both complicated and transformative, and a whole panoply of other characters, some new, all made anew, rebuilt and recast. As I read, my questions about Area X became less insistent. What I wanted was to follow this cast of characters to better understand their various compasses and motivations, what pulled at them, what pushed them, what brought them to each other, and which beacons drew them, willingly or unwillingly, on their journeys. For acceptance is, of course, a book of journeys both metaphysical and physical. One finds out a lot more about Area X in acceptance. One is offered a variety of explanations and answers, all constrained by the points of view of the characters that offer them. Those explanations are revelatory, terrifying, and marvellous. But for me, what the book does most viscerally and with extraordinary technical skill is make you feel the characters' conflicts and longings tidally in your bones. VanderMeer has a phenomenal ability to articulate the complicated relationships of his characters, the forces pulling their connections this way or that, be they blackmail, fear, desire for intimacy, safety, or friendship. Their allegiance to one thing or to another, or oftentimes both. I think of Ghost Bird's complex blend.